You talked when the coaching change in Ottawa went down that this thing might take 10 to 15 games before we see anything noticeably better in terms of the details that Jacques Martin is so famous for. But it sure is difficult to live through the process. And it sounds like new GM Steve Staios is getting impatient with the process because he is talking trade. Let me actually read this Darren Dreger report. Big test for the Senators in Edmonton. There's nothing close, but Sens GM Steve Staios has definitely let it be known he wants to be aggressive on the trade front. The makeup of the team needs to be changed. It won't involve Ottawa's young talent. Staios is currently in a lot of conversations. What's your reaction to that?
Well, positive and negative. Like the positive is okay that the man has finally been here long enough, looked at it long enough, made some assessments. I think that's one assessment that's probably coming from Jacques Martin and Daniel Alfredson as much as coming from Staios's views of the team. Is that they've decided that this team requires some older, quality, veteran, quote unquote pros. In other words, the same guys that Pierre Dorion identified, sorry, the same type of player that Pierre Dorion always identified that he needed three or four of. And outside of Hamonic and Giroux and maybe Austin Watson, I don't know too many of them that really worked out here. That's the type of player that Steve Staios is apparently looking for. The negative to that is so is every other team. If I'm a team chasing a Stanley Cup, I'm looking for like Tampa when they went out and got the Barclay Goodrows of the world and the Blake Colemans. That's the type of player that Steve Staios is looking for. So the price, as soon as Ottawa makes an offer, all whatever team it is has to do is call one of the front runners and say, "Hey, this is the package that I'm looking at for this player. I know you'd like to have him, so the price is going to go up and up." So it may be difficult. Well, no, it will be difficult to get the type of players to make a change to the roster that you want to make and not give up some of the young guys. Outside of Vladimir Tarasenko, I don't know that you're going to get too much for a Dominic Kubalik or for whoever else it may be, even Eric Brandstrom, whoever it is that you're looking at moving. I can't see them being able to get the type of player they want and have that player with a come in here and bring a positive effect.
Yeah. When I go back to Darren Dreger's quote, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me in the big picture. He's let it known, Staios,
Mhm.
that he wants to be aggressive. The makeup of the team needs to be changed. I don't think you're accomplishing that, to be honest, without moving at least some of the young talent. And I mean that from changing the culture standpoint, because I feel like it's been over this rebuild a lot. If you're familiar with the book Lord of the Flies, where basically kids are running things without adults being present, that's kind of what it felt like. And by adults, I mean veterans who've been around the block and know what it takes to win. And that might be in the coaching side of things, which would have worked, and they didn't get it. And that might be on the player side of things. And Dorian dabbled in that, like you talked about, but it's with the Derek Stepans who are at the end. It's with the Braden Coburns who are at the end. There weren't the right kind of veterans, and like you said, they're not getting those types of veterans without giving up something pretty meaningful. And not only that, they're also not going to be able to afford that under the cap without
Mhm.
moving some of those young core players' contracts. So that's the part that really is, I'm not taking apart Darren Dreger's report. I'm sure Steve Staios is talking, but I'm not sure how much Staios is going to be able to do without moving out some of that young core, and what meaningfully you might get back for that. Like there's contracts on this roster. We were talking off the air that I'm starting to be concerned about. Thomas Shabbat's is one. He's still got 4 more years left at $8 million a year. He's not delivering even close to an $8 million a year rate. And even a guy like Josh Norris, he got some goals recently, but that's a guy he's signed up for 7 more years at nearly $8 million, and he's not at that level right now. Hasn't been since he got back from the shoulder injury. That's going to take some time. I get that, but we're getting into a point now where he's played almost half a season, and I'd like to see, I don't know, a little more zest and fire consistently out of his game. So, yeah, I mean, this is going to be a challenge for Steve Staios, whatever he's got up his sleeve.
I get the reticence to try to ship out any of the younger guys. Like I understand the reasoning behind it. You don't want to have one of these guys go somewhere and turn into a superstar. Like could Josh Norris play in a number two center on a Stanley Cup winning team? I bet he'd look pretty good with the supporting cast. It's not just the quality of his line mates that matters. It's the quality of the whole group. It's how strong is each collection of 5 guys that you can put out on the ice. When all 5 guys are pulling on the rope the same way, executing the same system, following the same structure, everybody looks better. And I think that's part of the problem is that you want these guys to learn and execute better before you can make a call on it, before you can say, yeah, we are paying Thomas Chabot a lot of money. He's not producing, or a Josh Norris, or whoever you choose. The problem is they just haven't seen them play within the kind of structure that they need in order to properly evaluate what they have. So they've determined that Travis Hamonic and Claude Giroux are not enough in the veteran presence. It was Elliot Friedman who used the term pro. They're looking for some pros, and I get that. The only two have been Hamonic and Giroux that are still here, that are actually having that effect. I mean, Nick Holden to a certain extent, but he's gone, and that's what they're looking for. And you're right. You probably got to give up somebody young if you want to get somebody really good. But if you can get some veteran pro on an expiring contract who maybe his next contract is going to be a lot cheaper and maybe you can retain him, maybe there is somebody out there. I just haven't, in the list of names I've seen, I haven't seen anybody yet that I think they're capable of getting.
Are you surprised, though, in general, that Staios is even going down this road to be talking about trades at this stage without a full evaluation as the GM of this club with a new coaching staff? He said that when he took over as GM. I really want to see how this team responds under a new coaching staff with Jacques Martin and Daniel Offertson being added to the mix. Because when Staios and Andlauer arrived to oversee everything, they were almost patient to a fault with DJ Smith because they wanted to gather information. They wanted stability. They wanted to see how things looked, not just hear about what's happened in the past. They wanted to see it for themselves, what the dynamic was with the coaching staff as is and the existing group of players. And again, to a fault, they probably waited too long. If the Jacques Martin thing had happened when most fans wanted it to happen, and they're thinking about, the last 4 or 5 years under DJ Smith, not just now, then maybe the season's still recoverable. Maybe they can, get Jacques Martin's systems in there earlier and get details in there earlier. But no, they wanted to, Staios and Andlauer, they wanted to take their time and make sure they made the right decision. And now you talked about 10 to 15 games before things change, and now they're talking about trades already. Based on the MO of this new group, this new regime, are you a little surprised that we're even having this conversation about
Well,
trades this early in the game?
it's weird that we're complaining that on one hand that they took too long in this assessment, and they were so patient. Did they have to be that patient? And yet on the other hand, we're saying, wait a minute, do you really need to make changes now? I think it's if Steos, if the group can be successful in finding what they want to find at the price that it, let's face it, that's what that guy is really worth. Like, the type of player they're looking for isn't worth a Josh Norris, isn't worth a Thomas Chabot, or even a Drake Batherson or a Matthew Joseph for that matter. So if they
Mm.
can find what they're looking for a second or a third or I don't know, a couple of guys from Belleville, if they can do that, then they're fine. I think they have taken their time, they have assessed, and they've determined that this is one thing that we can fix now. Yes, there are issues with structure, with doing the right things, with puck protection, with how to play the game the right way. That we can fix with coaching, but this is an issue where we're lacking some veteran core, or not core, I guess, bottom six uh, type guys with veteran presence and leadership and pros.
Yeah.
That's something you can fix right away, hopefully, if you can find the right thing, and it should have an effect, right? I think it can be done. I don't think they've waited too long, no, and I don't think they're doing it too fast either. I think they're just going to have a problem finding it and getting it at the price that works for them.
Yeah, I'm not talking about my complaints about it. I just see it feels inconsistent. That's
Yeah,
all.
I get that too.
If
Yeah.
yeah, if Staios wants to go and make a deal and he thinks that's going to help, then have at it. And it's interesting the timing of the Dreger report, right? Because they're in Edmonton. Steve Staios played forever in Edmonton, not forever, but probably about 8 years as a defenseman. And of course, the last year before he arrived in Ottawa, he was in their front office, so he's got connections galore. So I couldn't help with that report coming out and the Sens actually being in Edmonton. Um, having a look at the Oiler roster and thinking about guys that might fit the bill, and there's Connor Brown. There's a guy that, he hasn't scored a goal since he left Ottawa. Can you imagine?
Yeah,
He goes to Washington. He gets hurt right away. Only played 4 games. He's played 28 games in Edmonton. He's got 0 goals and 3 assists for the Oilers in 28 games there. But I looked at a guy last night watching the game. I said, "He looks like he can still skate," and it got me to thinking. And when we talk about the veteran guys who've come through this organization during the rebuild, I mean, Connor Brown's near the top of the list of guys that play the game the right way, that had some effect on the team, and I was surprised when they moved him out to Washington for a second rounder. That might be a guy if you're going to maybe do business with Edmonton or look for that type of veteran player. That might be a good buy low candidate because Oiler fans, well, they've had enough of looking at Connor Brown, to be honest.
yeah. He is a guy. Yes, that's the type of player, and the fact that he's been here, he knows the situation. Uh, I got to believe that everything's in better off ice stuff here is way better than it was when he was here before. So that would appeal to him to come here. Yeah, he's the type, and would he help improve the PK that is 31st, or are they now dropped to 32nd in the
They
NHL?
they
Like
were
Connor Brown.
32nd entering.
Okay, so there you go. Connor Brown's going to help your PK too. Will he score a goal? Probably not, but he'll settle in to where you always thought he could play in your top six. I always thought he was more of a bottom six. So, but now I think we can agree he'd be a bottom six guy. He'd play on your third line, maybe your fourth line. He'd kill penalties, but he'd be a presence in the room and a leader and a respected guy and a pro's pro. Yes, Connor Brown's the type of guy. And would he seriously really cost anything more than a fourth? Like there's no way on earth somebody look at his stats, look at his time on ice, look at his contribution to that Edmonton team. If they want anything like a second or third, like forget it. You're on drugs.
Yeah,
You're not getting that for Connor Brown right now. Plus his
yeah.
salary. He's carrying a hefty salary for his situation. So yeah, he'd be a great answer, Steve. I agree with you on that one. That'd be pretty good.